Hello everyone, I'm Matthew Hines for Encounters USA. We are your one-stop podcast and YouTube channel for all things alien, Bigfoot, and Dogman. So relax, kick up your feet, grab one of your favorite beverages, and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special and an exciting episode of Encounters USA. Now, I've done a lot of podcasts with Encounters USA, and I can tell you right now, this is one podcast I wish I was really not hosting. I really wish I could just sit back and watch and listen. It's going to be really exciting. I've got three fantastic guests, so we'll start off with... Simeon Hein, I guess. Simeon Hein is a PhD. He has an institute called the Mount Baldy Institute that he will be talking about. He's a remote viewer. We also have Montra Freitas, and I hope I'm saying that right.
Yep, close enough, but actually it's Withers now. So
it's Withers, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, maybe we need to catch up then. Okay.
That's okay.
And then Kyle, I was waiting for some information, but so Kyle, I'm just going to let you start off by introducing yourself. Now, I want you guys to answer some kind of specific yet general questions. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your interest, how you got started in the paranormal, and what excites you and where you want to go with it. So, Kyle, why don't you start off first?
Well, how I got into it was I grew up here in the Washington State, and my grandparents and my parents had quite a big family, but we grew up hunting and fishing a lot. And so we traveled all around the state. You know, we'd always go in the mountains and hunt at certain hunting seasons and, fish all the lakes and fish all the rivers. And that was kind of Grandpa and Grandma's thing. They taught us, very young. I mean, by the time we were walking, we knew how to use a gun, and we knew how to fish, and so just all the years of being here, spending lots of times in the mountains, and I just had a passion for the mountains. I just love to be outdoors. In fact, that's kind of like why I do what I do today. I have a building company where I build really high-end landscapes and outdoor living spaces for people.
Okay, you want to talk a little bit about what you do as far as that goes, or and don't be afraid to plug your business, Kyle.
Well, yeah. So me and Montra, we both spend a lot of time. If we're not working, we're in the woods. In fact, we're going to be in the woods tomorrow. Okay. We're going to be on a snowmobile up in the middle of nowhere tomorrow. So that's the plan. Yeah. But if we're not working, we're always in the mountains. We're pretty spontaneous. I mean, there'd be nights where we'll be just sitting around the living room and we're like, oh, we're going to go Bigfooting. We jump in the truck, drive into the Blue Mountains. They're a little over an hour away from us. Wow. And we'll drive through the mountains at night and look for prints, just look for anything out of place, look for structures, look for anything going on.
Well, I want to ask you, what are the results of your investigations? But really, Kyle, that's going to be a whole nother podcast. Today, we're talking about Skinwalker Ranch, and you guys have had some experience with that. Let's go to Montra. Can you kind of answer the same questions? What is your background? What's your fascination with the paranormal? And where do you want to go with this?
Well, my background is that when I was about right between 12 and 13 years old, I had a sighting of something out in the woods. And it basically scared me to death. It was something that was watching me. I was by myself. It's a long story, but I was by myself out a little ways from a campground where my parents and I were camping. And it was something that was very large, very dark, and it was watching me from behind a tree. And that experience was so earth-shaking to me as a kid. I was too afraid to tell anybody about it because I thought they're going to think I'm nuts. So I'm not going to say anything. So I didn't tell anybody until, I was in my 30s, I think it was. And so I ended up filing a report with the BFRO. My brother talked me into doing it. So I got online and got a call back from Kathy Strain. And we ended up talking, and her and I ended up becoming very fast friends and doing investigations out in the field together for quite a few years. So that's kind of what launched me into getting into the field of Bigfooting. The paranormal, I've always had a fascination with that. And I mean, the minute I got my driver's license, I was out at haunted places trying to get EVPs and taking my little, at that time it was a cassette recorder, the big giant ones, and carrying that around. And so I've always been a weird kid, so I'm just a weird adult now. And as far as where do I want this to go, I think both Kyle and I are on the same page as far as we do this kind of just selfishly for ourselves because we want to know answers. It's hard to keep up with trying to make our results public as well as our thoughts and theories on things because we've seen it happen to our friends and colleagues and that they just get, they're in the line of fire and trying to defend themselves more so than getting any good feedback or anything that's of any value as far as research goes. So we could just kind of keep to ourselves with that mostly, and just with some close friends and other researchers, we share information, but we don't want to be in the line of fire so much. We just kind of want to do what we love to do and keep doing that until, I don't know, probably for forever, unless we get some major answers anytime soon. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, that is just, I want to just sit and milk you guys for whatever information you have. And I'm sure that by the time we get done with just what we talk about today, people are going to be going, why have you not published? And you owe it to people to publish the stuff that you know. So we can talk about that later, but let's move on over to Dr. Simeon Hein. Simeon, thank you so much for doing the podcast. Sure. Would you, Simeon is he's what they called in Raising Arizona, a recidivative offender. He's been on Encounters USA before, and he came back for more. So kudos to you, Simeon.
Thanks, Matt.
Now, do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit? I'd like you to talk a little bit about, because you're going to kind of lead into what I would like to talk about tonight. And your institute, your Mount Baldy Institute, would you explain a little bit about what you do? And in the few brief sentences I'm going to give you, can you also talk about your book, Opening Minds?
Oh, sure. Well, Matt, as you know, we went to the same university, and I had a pretty normal...
Cougs.
Go Cougs. I had a pretty normal academic career in Pullman, Washington, not all that far from Pasco.
Yep.
And I never heard of Bigfoot or UFOs or any of this while I was getting my PhD or teaching there afterwards. It was, I heard about this thing called remote viewing, and the academic part of my mind said it's got to be BS, right? The average person, can't be telepathic or precognitive. I didn't believe it, but I thought, to be fair, I'd take the class and just, see, be open-minded. And it really worked. I could draw pictures of targets in folders that were hidden behind me. Everyone in the class could do it. And it was shocking to find that we had this subterranean channel of information. It seemed to connect from here to there without going through the intervening space. You could just draw a picture that's over there. How do you do that? Okay, so that leads to people coming to these classes, some of them with strange stories, as you guys probably can guess. People that have worked at NASA, people that have worked in the government, and they have stories to tell. And they're basically telling you there's a lot more going on than you've been told. The public doesn't know what's really going on. And so I started going to UFO conferences, and lo and behold, there were some very good presenters with evidence, trace landing cases. Got interested in crop circles, went over there to England in 97 and found my batteries and cameras and people's devices were failing as soon as you walked into a crop circle, for real. I filmed it. And then eventually you end up with Bigfoot because UFO encounters have an overlap with Bigfoot sightings. And you start reading more about that and you realize that there are a whole range of hidden events, as sociologists call them. The stranger the experience, the less likely people are to talk about it. And if you couple that with fear or terror, they may never even want to talk about it to themselves. So basically, we've got this reinforcing mechanism that doesn't let us talk about what people are really experiencing. Plus institutions that don't want us talking about it for whatever reason. So we've got this double whammy keeping people from talking about their strange encounters. And I'm really interested in, what these strange encounters mean for how reality really works. The last time I was on the show, Matt talked about dogmen. I had never heard of dogmen. I've been reading about dogmen. People encounter this dog that walks on two legs or groups of them. I mean, what is that? We don't know. And so I basically, we really don't know what our reality is made of. That's my conclusion. Because when it happens to people, they simply won't talk about it if they feel, like you said, Montra, be in the line of fire. People don't want to be ridiculed by their neighbors and their colleagues and their employers, especially those who work in the government and the military. So basically, we don't really know what's going on anymore because the witnesses have stopped talking. And until recently, we've had more come out from the Navy and so forth. So it looks to me like things are starting to open up, which is exciting. And that's my perspective on this.
Well, I think that's a wrap. I think we can all go home now.
Okay.
I wish it was that easy.
No, that is just so perfect. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make my disclaimer right now. So we're going to be talking about tonight. If you aren't excited right now, I just have goosebumps. So tonight we're going to be talking about remote viewing. We're going to be talking about crop circles, portals, consciousness, dimensions, the government, and the idea of disclosure. So if you're new to Encounters USA, and probably because of Montra and Kyle, because of Simeon, we're going to have a lot of people that have not seen this podcast yet. So the first thing I want you to understand is we are, and I'll just go ahead and say this, that and it's hard for me to read without my glasses, so I'm just kind of looking at this, but we're not here to prove anything. We're here to discuss what has already been accepted and reported, and I will add by factual or credible individuals, NGOs, and government agencies. So everything that we're going to be talking about it's not about, well, do you think it exists or not? We're way beyond that on Encounters USA. So anybody who even would begin a conversation like that, you'd be in the wrong place. So to us, this stuff is all very real. To scientists, pilots, military people, it's all very real. To Kyle, it's real. To Montra, it's real. And to Simeon, it's real. So what we're going to be talking about today, because there's been a lot of information coming out, and we want to basically explore, first of all, the idea of consciousness. And we're going to be going to a fun and exciting place called Skinwalker Ranch as our first stop into our little inquiry. So before I let Kyle and Montra get going, Simeon, can I ask you your experience at Skinwalker, or if you have any?
I've only driven by there. I haven't actually been on the ranch.
Okay.
I have when I got out, but it's interesting you ask about that, because that was one of the first strange things I heard about when I got out to Boulder in 1996. There was a lecture by someone that had written a book about Skinwalker Ranch down the road from here. Stephen Greer was there. It was like a little mini conference. And I got to hear about the San Luis Valley and Skinwalker Ranch. And this is Chris O'Brien. Yeah. And he told every detail about that ranch, including the names of the owners and everything, which I think they've attempted to cover up now because they don't want them being harassed wherever they are. It was fascinating to hear about these encounters, which we now know were studied by the Department of Defense with the OSAP program. Mm-hmm. This is before ATIP. They were sending people out to Skinwalker Ranch to see if the phenomena out there were a national security threat. Don't you find that astounding? They're spending taxpayer money on the phenomena that are out there, which include strange cryptid animals, Bigfoot, UFO, and very tall people that come out of the UFOs and all sorts of things. And as you know, it's now owned by someone else. There's been a show on the History Channel, and that's my knowledge of it. And now there's a new episode, a season coming up. But so I haven't been out there, but I've just heard and read a lot about it.
So, Simeon, that's the first I've ever heard of the rationale for them studying it. It was because they justified it by it being a national security threat.
That's what they say.
That was the question. Was that was that Bigelow's deal?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was with Bigelow, and from what I've read about it, they were sending people out there to study it. And what we've heard is that the phenomena followed some of these scientists home. They started experiencing some of these around their house. They shouldn't be surprised to anyone. This phenomena, it's fluid and flexible. And if you think you figured it out, you have something coming to you because it can follow you home. It doesn't necessarily do it, but I mean, the sense of space and time is not the way we've been taught it works. So, go interact with these things with some sense of caution. That's what I would recommend, unless you're open to anything happening, because sometimes it does. Sometimes it does.
Well, Simeon, I'm going to just jump in here and say, hey, Kyle and Montra just went to Skinwalker Ranch. So
yeah.
What did you guys bring home with you? Why do I keep getting all this static on my phone? Well, all right. Before you guys start, I just want to.
I'll tell you what. When me and Montra first found out we were going there with a real good friend of ours that had been doing research there. And I'm the kind of person where I keep an open mind. I hear a lot, but until I see it for myself, it's just talk. That's just how I am. I can listen to people's stories, and I keep an open mind, and I can tell you that I wasn't expecting what I saw. I was not expecting that.
Okay.
And there's a feeling there that's not like any other feeling you get anywhere. There's a deep, dark feeling when you go on that property.
Mm-hmm. But Kyle, could you talk about what happened even before you went out there? I mean, are you at liberty to do that, or do you want to just let that go?
What do you mean before I went out there?
Well, you said that there were people that were like at the.
Oh yeah. So we got off the airplane and we got a car, and then we drove to our hotel room, and we noticed that even on our way to our hotel room, we were being followed, but we didn't really know who was following us. And then we parked out there to go check into the hotel, and we noticed these men were in the lounge of the hotel. And there was TV up in the ceiling. They were kind of watching TV, and I didn't really recognize them at first, but I just thought to myself, it's kind of interesting, why would they just be sitting here hanging out in the lobby? And they looked out of place. They didn't look like they should be there in the lobby. And so, I kind of like took in mind, and Barry Fitzgerald that was with us in Montra, we all noticed these guys, and they're acting kind of peculiar, just kind of weird. Then once we put everything in our room, we went to go get in our car to go head out that way, and we noticed that they came out of the lounge, and they got in their cars and they followed us. Well, we went all the way to the Space Wolf. Is it called Space Wolf? Yeah, Space Wolf Ranch, which is the neighboring ranch of that ranch.
The border Skinwalker.
The border Skinwalker, basically on the same property. And as soon as we pulled in there, those trucks that were out there in the parking lot at our hotel, they were there, and they were parked up, and you could tell they were talking to each other, a couple of them. And the whole time they just kept running up and down the road, up and down the road, up and down the road. And they would park down further down the road and just kind of sit there and watch us. And I mean, as soon as we would leave, they would leave. And then we started noticing those trucks were going over to the Skinwalker Ranch driveway on the other side. We noticed the same trucks. Then we noticed on the rim, their whole, while we were there the whole time, the people that were on Skinwalker were very interested in the rim on top of that rockery area, the ridge area. There's something down there in that ridge area that they really guard. I mean, a couple guys had guns, had rifles, and some of them were looking at us through binoculars, and we were looking at them through our binoculars. You know, we were watching them, and we're like, these guys, what are they doing over there? Why have they got guns, and why are they looking at us? Mm-hmm. So we just kept kind of watching them, and they kept watching us, and it was really odd. It was very strange.
So any UFO activity, anything out of the ordinary?
Yes, yep. We had a UFO activity there for sure. On that rim, on the mesa, there's these big kind of like fluorescent tube lights shining down on the rockery. They shot up into the sky, and you could see them plain as day. I mean, at night especially. We saw orbs, we saw lights, we saw all kinds of
There's two video clips. I don't know if I've got the third one. There's three, but I think I just have the two that Barry took that I could forward to you, Matt. Of some stuff zipping around the sky that's pretty awesome. So
if you will, I can tack them onto this video if you do it in a timely manner. That's all I can say. I like to get these up. I'm a busy person, so I like to move on once I get these things recorded. So, all right, Montra, well, let's hear from you. You have more of a background in, I guess I say esoteric. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but you kind of look into the ghost aspect of things. So what were your feelings? What kind of intuitive thoughts did you have there?
Well, over at Skinwalker, so I've noticed that my radar is really off when it comes to knowing if some place is haunted or if anything like anything's going to happen. And so I'm usually way off. And so I'll walk into somewhere and go, I don't feel anything. Feels fine to me. And then we'll have so many EVPs when we leave. We'll be going, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? But with Skinwalker, so where we were is a place called Skinwalker Ranch, like Kyle said, which borders Skinwalker. So our view was such that we could see the house, the ranch house.
So we were above them a little bit, so we could see everything slightly down.
So we're looking
down at them. So
we could see the bait pens. Also, the ridge there was right in front of us. And so when night fell, so we were there for, what was it, 3 nights? I think it was 3 nights.
3 nights, yeah.
When night fell, there was just kind of a little bit of a different feel to the place. During the day, we had walked around with our host and looked at some different things. There was just odd things because we're out in the middle of nowhere. And there was a boar. And I guess from what I understand, boars are not allowed in Utah. So there was a carcass of a boar, a wild boar. Yep. And the head had been removed and it had been cut open in such a way that it looked like someone either had taken scissors or something and just it was very strange. It was like almost a cauterized cut, like someone had taken some sort of a surgical tool to it. It was very weird. And it had been out there for, I think, about a week or something by the time we got there.
I'm sorry, how long had it been there?
About a week, I think, before we got there. Okay. Maybe a few days longer than that, but it wasn't too long. But it didn't have any bugs on it.
Yeah, like
nothing would get on it.
Most animals.
Bugs everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's down by a canal kind of. There's kind of a canal and a ditch that runs through there. And first thing we notice is why isn't the bugs and animals on? There's nothing on it. I mean, there's nothing.
There were no fly larvae, nothing.
Nothing.
And the tendons and the meat that was still left in it was just drying up. And there's red ants all over the place too. I mean, there's tons of stuff that should have been feeding on that.
Wow.
Nothing was touching it. So it was just really weird. There were so many little weird pieces like that. It's a lot like Simeon, like what you had said too. I mean, there's so many little pieces of information that that even Kyle and I experienced that just don't make sense, and that you hope will be a puzzle piece at a later time that you can fit in. But even the show that was on the Skinwalker Ranch show, I think it's coming up for a second season.
Okay, so what do you think? What do you
I think they're holding out a lot of information. I'm telling you, because reality TV, but I can tell you that they're only giving out a little bit of what they know for sure.
I think, and I wish I have sometime, I hope maybe in my bucket list to meet Bigelow. I think he's awesome, and I would love to talk to him and see if there would be any answers he would let on to as far as what he found there. Because there's so much activity, and it's all different stuff. But the people that were there on the Skinwalker Ranch that actually managed the place and lived there, it's a couple, super nice. They had an experience a couple nights before we got there where they saw 3 Bigfoot-like creatures that were messing with the lights, the motion lights that they had on a building that they had just put up. And they said they were, about as tall as the building? And the building is about, 12 feet tall.
They reached up and they actually ripped these lights off the building. And you could see, actually it was on the RV. There was lights on the RV that got ripped off because you could actually see where they ripped it off. Yeah,
there was the building that they just put up to the little cabin.
And it was a caretaker guy that came down and talked to us, a younger guy that was living on the back of the property. He's the one that came and told us about these 3 big creatures that looked like Bigfoot. Yeah, and he was scared to death. He was petrified.
And so I think that the activity that's happening on Skinwalker Ranch, I don't think it's just inside the perimeter of Skinwalker Ranch. It's the whole Uintah Basin.
It's the whole rim through there. Yep.
Now there's a place that we've gone afterwards that Barry wanted to go to, Barry Fitzgerald, and so we went. It's over the McConkey Ranch, which is over in Vernal, Utah, and there's just an incredible amount of petroglyphs out there. It's amazing. And Barry had looked into this, and the tribe that was out there that had done the petroglyphs way back when were headhunters. And so that whole area is just filled with this dark energy. Again, I can't feel it, but it's just Kyle can feel it.
I can feel it. Yeah.
Most people can feel it, but it's just, there's so much negative in that whole area. But again, the activity and the things that are being seen and heard and felt out there, it's just like a potpourri of all this paranormal stuff all shoved into this basin.
Yeah. And tell them kind of about the energies, the negative energies and the plates and stuff like that we're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys have touched on all these different topics that I don't want to let you just get away with. Simeon, I think that I'd like to ask you right now, have you ever remote viewed Skinwalker Ranch?
No, I haven't.
Why not?
I like to do targets where you can get feedback right after the session. And when you do these sort of esoteric targets, they're fun to do. But you don't really know at the end of the day what you're getting and that's why I went over to England to see the crop circles. If you don't go over and get tactile feedback, you can't tell if you're inventing the data or if it corresponds to this particular reality. So I don't do as many of those. It takes a lot of energy to do a session. There's a lot of information about it, and it's certainly an interesting, it could be incorporated as a project, like, let's say the new owner said to us, can you do an RV project for us with Skinwalker? And we set it up as a group, right, with people that prepared the targets. It's a big operation to do a RV session. The feedback is as important as the session itself. And of course, the viewer can't be told what they're looking at. So it takes a team to create RV, and perhaps that's something we'll do in the future if it, if somebody wants to set it up. And these things take a lot of time. So, yeah.
Oh, I want to do it in the future. Okay, so you haven't done it. I want to just jump in here and say this before we get cut off. Zoom gives you 40 minutes. And so I think we're just about at the end of our first 40 minutes. Are we good for another
Sure.
round?
Yep.
You bet.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop this. I'll send you the link to the next meeting, and you can take a break for just a couple of minutes. Okay?
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, it's been great. All right, so we'll get right back to you guys. Thanks, and talking to
Thanks,
you.
Matt.
Yep.
Thanks. Okay.
And don't let me forget to push record. I cannot see this
Okay.
thing without my glasses. Do you wish everything was free? Do you wish you didn't have any bills to pay? Well, here at Deceptions of the Ages News, we wish that all the time. Unfortunately, it's just not true. But what is true is we have some fantastic books, and they're for sale at hindsight.com, especially Deceptions of the Ages, Mormons, Freemasons, and extraterrestrials. It's available wherever you buy books, or go to hindsight.com and get an autographed edition. Now, let's go back to our program. Okay, so here we are. We're back again for round two. It's the Zoom thing. It's been so long. When I first started using Zoom, there was no 40-minute limit, but suddenly there is. So we had a brief interruption. Everybody had a chance to take a break, and now we are back for. We haven't even done not even half of the podcast, as far as I'm concerned. So we're going to have to kind of, I guess, either move along faster or skip some information. So before we leave Skinwalker Ranch, I'm going to throw this quote at you from George Knapp said it, and he's quoting somebody else, but he said something about like the dimension at Skinwalker Ranch is thin. Can anybody talk about that?
Well, I think probably, I don't know if he meant more, the veil is thin, like the, the distance between us and whatever else is impeding into that space. I know it was something that George Knapp had said prior to was really interesting to me. In fact, I heard it on the plane when we were going on our way over there. And that was, he'd said, whatever it is that's there will size you up. And if, sorry, I have a dog that's just about to crawl into space here. And it'll size you up and figure out, are you, kind of a weak person, or are you someone who it's going to toy with? So it's interesting because it's almost like the whole place has a consciousness to it.
Right. And there are some questions that, maybe you can answer and maybe you can't. But here's one that I have for you, and it might go back to your wild boar example. But so on Skinwalker Ranch, there were these incidents of these cows that were mutilated, and that one, the calf, where it was just basically torn apart, and how does this intelligence or whatever it is, how does it differentiate between a human being and an animal? Why doesn't it tear a human being apart? What do you think the process is there?
I think that there's something else that it needs from the cattle that it's not getting from us, or it's just easier to get it from a cow. Whereas if it was a person left mutilated, there would be a much bigger stink on a much higher level. So I have really no idea, and I'm not a scientist by any means. So from what we understand, and what we've been told by people that have much more knowledge about this than we do, is that they think that there could be something in the mucosa of the cows that is helping. Again, this is totally hypothetical, don't have any proof, that is helping some sort of alien species to build up their immunity to things that they're not able to keep from hurting them in some way, viruses and things like that, on our world. And that's just again, total theory. Don't know if it's true, but that's something that Kyle and I have tossed around quite a bit. And we've been told by some reputable folks that that's their belief. The areas that they seem to take are around the mouth, the eyes, and the opposite end.
Sexual organs.
Yeah. So I don't know, but it could be.
Okay. Is there, Simon, do you have any, or Simeon, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, there's just, I mean, there are a lot of unknowns here. It's a question of who knows about this, and have we been told everything that's known? Or is the truth about it so unsettling that we haven't been told about what we're around? Because an alternative way to look at it is it's not aliens the way we think of them from another planet. It could be that there's other intelligence on our planet that we've never recognized, other types of beings that see us as, I don't know, see our lives and our things that we have as something that they can just do with what they want.
Right.
In other words, we may not be the top species on the planet. We've always assumed that we are, but maybe we're not. Maybe there's just something else here, and it's very good at staying camouflaged most of the time, except in places like Skinwalker, where the dimensions are a little thinner and it's easy for it to kind of interact with us. And we don't know its motivations, but some of it definitely, we find it, it's something that's not acceptable by the norms that we have as modern people, to do that to living things without a purpose that can justify those sorts of activities. So there just could be something else that's here with us that we don't talk about. And it could be involved with many of these phenomena. It's a big topic, but it just means that what we think of as reality is really just the head of a tiny little pinprick on a whole sheet of paper.
Right.
Of reality.
And Skinwalker Ranch is just barely touching the base of it, because there's been other Skinwalker Ranches throughout the world. Skinwalker Ranch is not the only Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, look what happened in Arizona on the Bradshaw Ranch. And look at, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Mel's Hole out of Ellensburg. There's a lot of different entities here. I have certain beliefs that you hit right on the button. There's things that have been here before we were here.
Okay. Well, before we move on, Montra, you said something I want to kind of go into a little bit, and it's with this idea of consciousness. You said that if you go on that ranch, it sounded like you said that, like, if you're a strong, like a type A personality, that thing's going to pick you out. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I have come to understand from other people. Is that
so it's gonna, like, the guys that were the subject of the Skinwalker Ranch, story. Obviously, that guy was a fairly strong type A individual, wanted to protect his family. He was domesticated these animals, and so you think that maybe that was the perfect, the perfect nemesis for this thing, or vice versa?
It may have been. It may have just been that it was, unfortunately, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And, that whatever that is, and when I say that, I kind of mean kind of like what George had said, which is a consciousness. And again, I don't know if that's what's out there, but whatever that is, was toying with those people and toyed with them for quite some time, and in terrible ways. I mean, putting all their prized cattle into a cargo container, things like that, when they had just driven by and seen all these animals in the pen that they're supposed to be in. Coming back the other way, they're all gone, and they discovered that they've crammed into this area, which they could never have gotten into on their own. Okay. So, and poltergeist activity and such. So
All right. So before we go, and we're really going to start going into Kyle's background down at Hanford and with UFOs. But before we go into that, Simeon, what do you have to say about the idea of consciousness being there, and that there are certain personality types or whatever that kind of got this thing, fired up. And when they brought in the special equipment, whatever, well, it just seemed to be having whatever this thing was. And I'm not going to say anything else, Simeon. You tell me, is that consciousness?
No, it's a good question. I've talked to people that were out there in the early days with Bigelow, who were monitoring the equipment, infrared cameras, all the incidents that they had back then that you've all heard about. And I think our sense of consciousness is very anthropocentric. We assume it's happening somewhere in our head, has to do with the brain, and it's almost, in some ways, unique to humans. I mean, we know that's not true. Animals have a lot of intelligence too. But we have a view of intelligence based on the way we are. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe intelligence doesn't need a body. Maybe it can manifest itself in different ways because, if you, look at all the types of encounters people have had out at Skinwalker, it seems that they're being played with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so fascinating you brought up the lights ripped out of the trailer, because you remember one of the initial stories is they saw from one of the cameras the wires getting ripped down from the telephone poles. Remember, they early in the days in the Bigelow investigation, they put cameras up there. And I spoke to someone who was there when this happened, and they could see the wires getting ripped off the poles and everything from another camera that was still operating, but they couldn't see anything doing it. It was like something invisible was ripping out wires up and down the telephone pole. It just reminded me what you said with the Bigfoot type creatures. So, maybe we just need a degree of humility and say, there are things that we don't know what they are, but they're real. Just because we can't define them doesn't mean they're real. They're there. We don't have many words for them. Tough. That's reality, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to use up our time as wisely as I can here. So we're just going to jump into kind of our next topic that's going to lead into the idea of portals. And before we leave Skinwalker Ranch, are we all agreed that the people there did see? I'm just basing on what I hear. I didn't see this myself, but people saw things coming out of like these creatures, the Bigfoot creatures. I would like to lead into Dogman, because I've heard of those creatures coming out of portals there. So do we agree that there are openings at that ranch?
I have not witnessed them myself with my very own eyes, but for me, I think that there is something that is traversing that area from a different plane of some kind. I don't know how. Portals is kind of the best way to say it, I suppose. But from what the scientists saw that were there when Bigelow was there, they saw things, an orb actually opening up to accommodate a human-sized type creature coming out of it. So I guess so. I mean,
yeah.
I hate the word portal, though. It's so overused.
What do you think? What would you rather use?
I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it.
Well, we're not saying portholes like on this ship, right?
Right.
That they're not coming through the window. No, I'm kidding. But okay, but that's an interesting thing, because it's just an idea we have, and it doesn't really encompass what this could be. Okay, so let's go to Kyle. Kyle, you grew up around Hanford. Could you talk? Well, no, before we go to Kyle, let me just preface this by saying that based on what Robert Solis, the captain, he was a captain at the missile silos, they seem to think that the nuclear weapons, they don't want us using them because they open up these holes into other dimensions. So with me saying that, do you think that our messing around with atomic weapons has done something to increase the activity. And Kyle, you can just take this and run with it.
I think, ever since the beginning of Hanford, and them building the first H bomb, my feeling is, from what I've heard from my family and people that I know out there and stuff, is they were really worried about us making some big mistakes with that stuff, because those nuclear bombs and those energies and stuff are just something that is a very dangerous thing that we're playing with. And I think they were interested in what we were doing with it, and they were trying to make sure basically that we didn't wipe ourselves out, because my understanding is, and what I feel is that we're here because of them. So,
but you've seen a lot of UFO activity around Hanford, right?
Oh yes, yeah. In fact, when Montra first moved down here from California, I took her out to a spot because, you can't get onto the reservation, but there's some areas over here that you can go along the river and you can get close enough to where you're across from the plant, and you can see what goes on. And usually, during the wintertime at certain nights and stuff like that, we can go out there and we can watch those things zipping around. Wow. So, she watched them. She was like, wow. And then it was snowing. The first time I took her out there, it was actually snowing, and she found some really weird tracks.
I found the weirdest tracks I've ever seen ever. And that's another story though, but
yeah.
Well, you can't leave it. What were they? What did they look like?
I sent photos to a professional tracker who's done it his whole life. I'm
a professional tracker, and I looked at him and I just I didn't know what it was.
Yeah. So he wrote me back and he said, the only thing I can think of that could possibly have made those tracks is a gigantic hopping.
Wow.
And I don't think there was a gigantic.
These prints were on the gravel road in the fresh snow, and they were going all the way down. They kept going.
Yeah, we followed them.
And this is what we were out there watching UFOs at the time.
Really? Were they big? Like big paw prints?
They looked more like, this is going to sound really weird, they looked more like two left feet, like a person's foot. But they were both either left or right. I think left feet. Can't remember now.
I think it was left feet. Yeah.
There were no right feet or whatever the opposite of it was. So it was, and the strides were huge. And
it got all the way down the road. We followed it in our truck, and we kept getting out and looking at it.
Wow.
It was just, it was so odd because there's nothing, we could see the toe prints. It was very clear. And we're out in a place where there were no tire tracks. There's nothing, no one else had been out there.
All there is out there is there's a place, there's like a fish hatchery out there, and it's these gravel roads, and they go to these old ponds, and they're right across from the Hanford site, and it's way out there. There's no houses out there, nothing out there. Nothing.
Maybe it's some mutant from one of their dumps. But did it have feet? Like, did it have toes or?
There were toes, yeah.
Wow, really? And both left feet. Wow.
Yeah, it was really weird. So.
Okay, well, let's go. Well, actually, we're not finished with you, Kyle. Your family also has a history going way back to Hanford, correct?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, my grandparents came here when Hanford first opened.
So what I'm looking at, and Simeon, you can jump into, was there an increase? We know that Skinwalker, and we haven't even talked about the San Luis Valley, but was there an increase? And just jump in and guess. You don't have to know for sure, but I think there was an increase when we started using atomic weapons of UFO activity, paranormal activity, because we ripped open these dimensions. Do you think that is plausible?
Well, first of all, I've been to Hanford too. There was a WSU project to study it and the cleanup effort. It never really got off the ground, but I took one trip out there to talk to the representatives from the Department of Energy. So I've seen it. also says gives us all something in common here also. But yeah, it's true. UFOs are attracted to nuclear weapons, storage sites, power, energy, like flies to honey. They're all over the world. It doesn't matter what country you are. You have some sort of atomic power, they're going to show up. I'm not sure if it's because dimensions are getting ripped open. I think they're monitoring what we're doing, just as you said earlier. I think it affects them and probably affects the structure of space-time when you release a lot of energy, and they probably don't find that acceptable. So they're always, Robert Salas was one of many missile control launch officers throughout the northern tier of the U.S. and all the SAC bases. Minot also, Wurtsmith in Michigan, and Loring, Maine, where repeatedly over and over these UFOs would come over, deactivate missile control systems, the missiles themselves. In some cases, they would activate them. That happened in the Ukraine once in 82, but it also happened in this country. And no, go ahead.
That happened in Montana. Yeah.
Happened in Montana, Great Falls. And I've interviewed people that have encountered these UFOs, security guards. And it is one terrifying encounter when you're up against those huge, powerful objects that can burn you. And you're just with your colleague out in the security alert truck. And these things show up, the cars stall. In some cases, people ended up transported a couple miles away, don't know how they got there. They wake up later, they've been unconscious. I mean, a whole range of phenomena. But what makes it worse is the government always tells the witnesses it never happened. You're never to talk about this again. They always separate these guys who've been working together for a long time. Sometimes they separate these security, policemen from their partners. They never see them again. It's happened over and over. They tell the missile control launch officers, you're never to talk about this with anyone, not even the people that come to repair the system later this afternoon. Not your wife, not your sweetie, no one. Or you're going to go to jail. You could lose your pension. You've all heard it before. So there are many more witnesses out there, I'm confident, to this phenomena that we haven't heard from because they were intimidated. I've spoken to some of them. I've spoken to Robert Salas, David Schindele from Minot. Others was at the Citizen hearing in 2013 in D.C. at the National Press Club. So it's a fascinating subject. I've heard this is also happening now in France from someone a year or two ago I met over in Europe. He told me what the French Navy had told him about these objects interfering with their nuclear submarine test practice exercises over their nuclear power facilities. The French government could not find out where these objects were coming from. They contacted every drone manufacturer they knew, and everyone said, it's not us. It's not that's not what we make. So it's a real mystery, and it's part of the Hanford legacy. You read any of Richard Dolan's books, UFOs and National Security State, he talks about these incidents over Hanford where jets were scrambled, way back early in the 50s. So this is part of it, part and parcel of the whole thing. And there's a big story to be told here because the U.S. government has done a very effective job of shutting people up from talking. I can tell you from firsthand experience, people don't want to lose their pensions after working for so many years for the government. Right.
They make good money. They make good money out there too. So I understand why,
Yeah.
Well, Kyle,
so we haven't heard the
who
whole
makes
story.
good money off it?
People that work out there at Hanford. I mean, people make good money. I got friends that I grew up with that take a nap out there, make $100 an hour. So I mean,
Wow.
serious.
I want that job.
Government work. All right. Well, you guys were probably going to run out of time here, so I'm just going to kind of jump ahead. I don't think we're going to have. I really wanted to hear Kyle talk about some of his Bigfoot stories. I wanted to have you talk about the connections of possibly Bigfoot and UFOs, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. What I'd like to kind of end on here is, since we're talking about the government, there's been a lot of disclosure, starting with the Navy disclosure bit. I don't know if you heard about the Israeli head of the space program for Israel said that the Americans have a base on Mars, and et cetera, et cetera. So things are are really going out there. So what do you guys think is the impetus? What's pushing all this? And also I want you to, if you would, tell me what you think they're afraid of and what we're going to find.
Well, I think one of the things they're afraid of is releasing too much information too quickly and not vetting the public to being used to the idea of beings from another planet. I mean, if you look at, what was it, Orson Welles and War of the Worlds way back when that came out, and some people thought that was real, and it was just over the radio. You know, people were committing suicide, thinking we've been invaded, and it was a horrible thing. So I think that getting people used to aliens, even the warm and fuzzy way they're trying to do it, even in commercials. You know, I can't remember what it was, Cheetos or some kind of commercial, you know, where, oh, you know, aliens are cute and they're your friend and they're just like ET. So just kind of even visually getting people used to the idea, I think is a way that's sort of happening. I don't know if in my lifetime I will ever see full disclosure. I doubt it. But I think maybe it's getting harder and harder to hide the fact that they're here now and they're already in society doing different things. I don't know.
Okay. Kyle?
I think, like I said, they've been here for a very long time. You know, it's easy to hide something right out in broad daylight.
Hidden in plain sight.
We're hidden in plain sight, you know. And there's a lot of history too, you know. There's a lot of back history, you know, even biblical times, you know, talking about how there was times that they called them the ant people, that the Hopi said the ant people came up and saved civilization more than once. There's a lot going on out there, and you know, our government, they're only gonna tell us what they want us to know and what they want us to believe, but they're not even straight with us as human beings. How do you think they're going to be straight with them as aliens? They're not going to tell us. And I've heard people say, you know, that we've made deals with them, you know, and I'm sure we have made deals with them. You know, there's very credible people that came forward talking about how our government made deals with them. And there's a lot of things coming. And like you said, recently, they're admitting, hey, we got UFOs and they're not ours, and they're coming forward. And then all of a sudden you say that, and then they're just waiting to see what the response is from us. You know, they're just waiting to see how we're going to react. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you in the next 5 years, I'd say that there's going to be a lot of things changing for sure.
Even the religious implications, though. I mean, there's so many levels of things that are going to get looked at a little differently depending on what's disclosed, you know, so. There's a lot of money involved too.
Yeah, a lot of money. Yeah.
Simeon, what do you say? What do you think?
Well, I think governments can lose control of societies a lot quicker than we generally think. I mean, I worked in Austria and Vienna in 1989, and then I worked next to people from the Soviet bloc. You know, it was a scientific East-West, you know, institute, and I worked right next to an East German fellow. This was in June of 1989. And he told me how East Germany wasn't that bad. If you had made your way up into a certain level with the party, you were kind of you had things taken care of, childcare and medical care. Well, by December of that year, his society had ceased to exist because the wall came down and there was no more East Germany. And talking to him that summer in 89, there's no way anyone would have seen that coming. No one did see it coming. But people can get fed up after a while. And we've seen some of that in our own society in the past couple of weeks, and take actions you wouldn't expect them to normally take, right?
Yep.
So we don't know what's going to happen, but the information is going to come out. And all I can say is the history of science shows us that our sense of the grandeur of the universe, the size of it, keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You can't stop it. They tried to stop it with Galileo and Copernicus, but it didn't work. Their work still people started reading what they were saying. And eventually we realized we weren't the center of the universe, that we went around the sun. Even when Albert Einstein was inventing his theories, do you know that they didn't even know there were any other galaxies besides the Milky Way until I believe it was around 1930? So that's not very long ago. 90 years ago, they just knew one galaxy. Now we know of billions. Mm-hmm. And the number of Earth-like planets that think are out there is just growing. I think it's at somewhere around 5 billion Earth-type planets estimate in the Milky Way alone. So my feeling, I'm a little more optimistic just because I think you can't really control things forever. It just does its own thing. Just like we found the Soviet Union ceased to exist. It'll happen in China eventually too. People don't like being controlled. It's just not in our nature to like being controlled. And I think eventually the truth wins. So that I'm gonna place my bets on the truth. It may not come out immediately, but there's obviously, I think we can all agree, there's a much bigger story going on here. Whatever it turns out to be, we don't know very much about these phenomena. We should know a lot more. It's been 70 years plus since Roswell.
We're like children. We're like children compared to them. We're not even near there. I mean, even our military pilots are saying, we don't have technology like this. We're not even capable of doing those things.
No, we're like children right now compared to where we're like in preschool compared to where we're going to be in the future in terms of relating to these entities, right? And how do we start, interacting with them? Who does it? Does it government people, the plan? I don't know. It's a lot of questions, but we deserve to know where we live here. And I don't think we really have a very good idea right now. I don't think we have a good idea from all the phenomena we've talked about on this show. These are real phenomena, and there's no interaction with formal science. They always want to say it's just tall tales. It's people that were hallucinating. The same old BS explanation since Roswell. And I don't think people are buying it anymore. So,
But, okay, so I'm just going to throw this out there because we didn't really get a chance to plug your book, Simeon, but I'm going to plug mine a little bit. I have a book called Deceptions of the Ages. And the point I make in it is that if the government, and I wrote this in 2010, if the government doesn't come out and start telling the truth about these things, then it loses its credibility as more people know that the government is lying about it. So that might have been the impetus, but is there a possibility that the reality is so horrible and it always has been? Now you talk about they'd wanted to avoid a mass panic. What did they do with this coronavirus? They caused a mass panic. That was their whole intent, was to have people freak out and do all these crazy things. Why didn't they want the mass panic then, but they wanted it now? So that's one thing. When I watched a thing on remote viewing, and what happened with Russell Tark, and he's talking about how Wikipedia says that he's like a nut. He's a pseudoscientist now. And they're sitting there saying, oh, religion, dogma destroyed us and they destroyed our program. It was dogma, but it was the dogma of science that destroyed them, right? So my question is, and something to think about as we go, is that could we really trust the government and the media to tell us really what was going on? Is the reality so horrible that we really can't handle it? And we're sending people out into space, right? I mean, Space Force and SpaceX. What's going to happen to those people when they get out in space? So all questions. Any thoughts before we close up shop here?
Thinking about that story about Jimmy Carter, when Jimmy Carter got briefed and talked to about the UFO and alien thing, and he went back to his office and laid his head down on his desk and broke down into tears. And that kind of, you wonder,
That's kind of been on our mind for a while. It sounds like the information that's out there, at least that's available to him and to the presidents, hopefully, is something that may be just cataclysmic. I mean, it might be that if it got out, we would know who our true maker was, maybe. I don't know. It could upset so many different layers of religion and I don't know. It's just, it could be so huge that it's or it could be something horrible like that Twilight Zone to serve man, I hope not. But
well, okay, so here's my point is maybe they want to say that remote viewing is a joke because they don't want people doing it. Maybe they don't want people to think about aliens or whatever because maybe the aliens are not horrible. And maybe it is possible, like with Stephen Greer, he's out talking to aliens. They're doing their contact, their whatever their thing is where they're contacting these aliens. Maybe this is what they don't want. Maybe there's nothing horrible, and maybe it's really positive for everybody, but the government won't have the control that Simeon talks about. So,
well, this is my book, Opening Minds.
Yes, there it is, Opening Minds.
I know it looks transparent because of the green screen effect, but
I'll put a link in the description to the video.
So the thing is, talking to the people in the ATIP program from the Department of Defense, they don't see the threat as the aliens. The threat is that another country gets a technological lead on the U.S., one of our adversaries, and we have a Sputnik moment, right? Where all of a sudden they leap ahead because they've been able to reverse engineer a crashed vehicle. So the danger of not talking about it is that other countries will get the lead if they're more open. And some of those countries are not afraid to talk to their citizens about this and give them presentations. I know in Latin America, they'd go into schools and show them pictures of the ovnis, the UFOs. Mm-hmm. So the danger of the secrecy we have here is that we'll fall behind scientifically and technologically, because other countries have conferences about it, are more open, they're sharing the information, and yet we still tell people they're seeing flocks of geese or weather balloons or ice crystals. Yeah. And that makes us kind of, primitive compared to where everyone else is. So there's dangers either way. Now, it could be also pretty scary to what this truth turns out to be. I mean, these cryptids and where they live, where they're coming from. So there's a lot of pitfalls here either way. We could be too secret and some other country figures it out and they have the tic tacs and we're toast here in the US, or we share too much information and people flip out and we have more types of activities like we saw take place in the Capitol where they go on a rampage. Yeah. So, there has to be some sort of place in the middle where we can take some action. We have to take some action. And that's what we should be. What should we be doing with all this knowledge? How do we move forward from here? We can't just stay still. But how do we do it in a way that doesn't cause our neighbors and people that are not familiar with these subjects to panic, right?
Yeah. Well, you guys, I'm going to have to end this now. I got the 10-minute warning about 9 minutes ago. So for Simeon Hein, I want to thank you. I want to send people's attention to the Mount Baldy Institute. So check that out. I'll leave a link in the description. And I want to thank Kyle and Montra. It is really a pleasure to meet you two. You're fantastic. And for everybody else out there, I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. There are so many things that we need to talk about. We will have all these guys back as soon as possible. But as we say on Encounters USA, always watch your back. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Matthew Hines here. Just want to remind you, if you like this kind of content, subscribe to this channel, whether you're listening on podcast or watching on YouTube. Also, go to encountersusa.com for more videos and podcasts, all archived for your convenience. Also, we have a wonderful Encounters USA blog, as well as an Encounters USA paranormal shop for all of your paranormal apparel. So, not only can you watch your back, you can put some of our designs on yours as well. So we'll see you on down the road on Encounters USA. All right, you guys, that's it.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Simeon.
Nice meeting you, Simeon.
Nice meeting you.
And we will.
Where can we get your book, both of you?
I'll send you.
Mine's on Amazon. It's on Amazon. You can get it used there for a couple bucks, I think, sometimes.
On Amazon? Okay. And Matt, and yours?
Same thing. Go to hindsight.com. I'll send you all my information. So
Okay.
Okay.
you'll be
Okay,
sick
great.
of me in no
Great.
time.
Simeon, we really want to read yours, though. I mean, we've had,
Yeah, let's stay in touch and
definitely.
talk sometime.
I'll
Next
be-
time I'm up in your. Yeah.
I'll be
Yeah,
over
yeah.
haunting all you guys, so don't worry.
Okay, good.
I'll let you
All
know when
right.
I'm in Washington again. So.
Definitely.
Sounds
We'd love to
good.
meet you in person. That'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
I got some things I'd like to show you over here.
All right. I'm
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
forward
All
to it.
right.
I've got 100 questions for you, too. I love remote viewing stuff. That's really interesting to me.
Me
so
too.
awesome. Thank you, Matt. Thank you
All
for
right.
having us.
Good night, you guys.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Take care.
Good night.
See ya. Thank you again.
Thanks.